Presentation 1, International Business and Globalization, prepared for discussion by Karen Wagan Pastrana, Instructor 1 from the Institute of Management. Globalization refers to the widening set of interdependent relationships, interactions or integrations among people, companies, and governments from different parts of the world. According to Karl Marx and Ernst Engel, globalization implies that the world is getting smaller, which means that the society we know, the old and local ways of living, are changing rapidly wherein the people around the world share many of the same things, and that the world is headed along a similar path. Because of this, drastic changes in the growth and development in the global economic activities have been observed. In the same manner, technological advancement is known to be one of the main driving forces that facilitates global interdependence. In the modern form of business globalization, technology has become a competitive strategy. For example, the conduct of business activities abroad are made easier and inexpensive due to the reduced cost of communications via phone calls or the use of internet and the transportation of raw materials or supplies across nations. International business consists of cross-border commercial transactions between two or more countries, which is not limited to the movement of goods, services, technologies, human capital, investment, transportation, and knowledge. The goal of private businesses in participating in international commerce is to make and increase profits. However, government businesses may or may not be motivated by profits, since government are expected not to run like a business in any forms or in any ways. Moving on, in the paper prepared by Ginigundo, retrieved dated August 30, 2022, evidence suggests that globalization has a positive effect on the economic growth and employment in the Philippines. In particular, trade openness and foreign portfolio have contributed to higher per capita GDP growth in the country. This is actually a good picture because the conduct of international business in the Philippines may verily help the population to work not only domestically but also in abroad to collaborate with foreign businesses. Studying international business is important because of the following reasons. First, most companies either are international or compete with international companies. Second, modes of operations may differ from those used domestically. Third, the best way of conducting business may differ by country. Fourth, an understanding helps you make better career decisions. And fifth, or the last one, is an understanding helps you to decide what governmental policies to support. The conduct of a company's international operations depends on two factors. First is its objectives. Why do the firm would like to enter international business? What are the main reasons? It could be because they want to expand their sales, to acquire resources, or to minimize the risk of business failure. Second is the means or the strategies which the company intends to achieve its objectives. And these strategies are categorized into modes, functions, and overlying alternatives. The best way to do business abroad may not be the same way at home. The question is, why? Because it requires an even more intensive strategic planning to tackle the different modes of business such as importing and exporting, tourism and transportation, licensing and franchising, turnkey operations, management contracts, as well as direct and portfolio investment, which differ from those it uses domestically. It is likewise important to take into considerations the operating environment of the host country, or simply the country where a company built or expanded its business activities abroad. And when we talk about business operations, it refers to the activities a firm is engaged on a day-to-day basis to earn profit. Generally, there are four main business functions, namely finance and accounting, human resources, production or operation, and marketing. As we discuss the strategies in international trade, Business functions also include manufacturing and supply chain management. Understanding the complexities of international business can be useful to the company because it will help the management make more sound decisions to objectively assess all the relevant information gathered, such as with the overlying alternatives, which are the following: the choice of countries, organization, and control mechanisms. Globalization is driven by various developments in the world economy, and there were three dimensions that paved way and contributed to these progressive changes. First, the cultural, second, economical, and third, political factors. In addition to these dimensions are the financial, social, and technological factors, of which the latter is known to be the vital force in the modern business globalization due to speedy technological diffusions across countries. Despite knowing and identifying the different forces driving globalization, numerous studies have made more comprehensive comparisons which resulted to several commonalities, such as the size of countries, where the smaller ones tend to be more globalized than the larger ones. Given smaller land masses and populations, small countries benefit more from greater trade at lower prices from their neighboring countries, and permit only a lower variety of production. Another force driving globalization in international trade is the income of the country's population. Countries with higher income populations tend to be more globalized than those with lower income populations, simply because their citizens can better afford foreign products, can travel around the globe, and can communicate with the people they met while traveling. Last but not the least is the variance among globalization aspects. Although a country may rank as highly globalized on one dimension, it may be low on another. While globalization offers extensive opportunities for worldwide development, not all the factors and forces impelling development proliferation is not progressing evenly. In the recent decades, there are several factors that have contributed to the growth of globalization, which most of the analysts have cited seven. First is the increase in and application of technology, such as the development of new products like mobile technology devices, which many of us are utilizing or using it for communication and other purposes. This is also true for business endeavors. Second is the liberalization of cross-border trade and resource movements, wherein countries tend to protect its own industries, restrict the movements of goods and services across its border, including the movement of resources such as manpower, capital, tools, and even technologies, because regulations can change without prior notice. However, due to increased globalization, some countries reduce these restrictions primarily for the following reasons. Number one, their citizens want a greater variety of goods and services at lower prices. Number two, competition encourages domestic producers to become more efficient. And number three, they hope to persuade other countries to lower their barriers in the conduct of business abroad. The third factor in increased globalization is the development of services that supports international business. To a large extent, these are services that enable the facilitation of global commerce. For example, is the conversion of currency when buying a product from another country. Say, availing a Nike shoes from the United States for $120. A particular bank from the Philippines will handle the payment and the conversion of the equivalent estimated amount of 6,800 pesos, in addition to some foreign transaction fees such as shipping costs or surcharge, to dollar currency and transfer the same to a U.S. bank. Fourth is the growth of consumer pressures. Nowadays, consumers are more educated than ever, and they always connected searching for quality products and services at low cost. And these have created challenges to multinational companies, which force them to engage in research and development, or R&D, and to search worldwide via the internet. Fifth is the increase in competition, which from the word itself constrains or pushes industries to find ways how to strategically sell their products or offer their services to a country or a market where competitors are gaining sales. How are they going to persuade consumers to buy their product despite tight competition? 6 are the changes in political situations and government policies, which most of it favor international exchange and trade compared to the past years wherein the exportation and importation of products have several restrictions. And it is true that governments are crucial in creating the macroeconomic condition of its countries. Lastly is the expansion of cross-national cooperation, where governments have to come to figure out that their own interests can be directed through international cooperation by means of treaties, agreements, and consultation. Globalization itself is not bad at all, especially when we talk about international business, because there are some advantages which can really help neighboring countries to strengthen its economy through access to new markets and talents, access to new cultures, the spread of technology and innovation, lower cost of products and services, and wide range of alternatives offered to customers to name few. However, arguments have also been made for decades, and one of the many criticisms of globalization is the threats to national sovereignty, which takes away the power of the government or the country in terms of economic and sometimes the political agenda. It comes with the idea that the government will lose its central power as the regulating body of the nation. Critics also claim that due to globalization, its remaining two explications or judgments are the environmental stress, wherein the resultant growth hurts the environment, and income inequality and personal stress are increasing reason why some people lose both relatively and absolutely caused by greater insecurity. As we continuously address globalization, nation sovereignty is defined as its freedom to act locally and without externally imposed restrictions. Generally speaking, companies engage in international business to expand its operations with the aim of reducing costs and increasing revenues. Usually, there are three objectives that guide firms in all the decisions to be taken, whether and how to engage in international trade. First is expanding sales by increasing the number of potential customers worldwide, which are limited if business operations will only be done in a single country. Second is acquiring resources, which can only be found in foreign countries because sometimes domestic resources or supplies are inadequate to support the day-to-day activities of a company or even the economic activities of a country. For example, the importation of crude oil in the Philippines coming from United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. And number three is reducing risk by minimizing swings in sales and profits through operating with different business cycles available in various countries. Moreover, obtaining raw materials or even supplies for products both domestically and internationally will alleviate the impact of price swings or economic shortages in a particular country. When pursuing international business, an organization must decide which modes of operations are suitable for the company. Could it be a merchandise exports or imports or service exports and imports? Or could it be tourism and transportation? Is the business operates under licensing and franchising? Or providing engineering services or the so-called turnkey operations? Is the company providing services for management contracts? And finally, is the business involved in direct and portfolio investment? Whichever modes the firm functions, it is very important to consider the various factors discussed in the previous slides. The business must conduct market research, and this goes without saying that this is the first step to review when planning to expand business internationally. Next is to look into the economic and political landscape of the country where the company wants to expand its operations. It is not just about a business diversification and to generate more revenues, but it is also of great significance to research about the market or economic conditions of the other country to check its economic and political stability. Politics, on the other hand, determines where and how international business can take place. Another important factor to consider when expanding business internationally is to study and understand the law, regulations, and restrictions imposed by the government on importation or trade. Agreements made among countries set the international law. However, understanding these laws is a tedious job, and the business for expansion may consider hiring an experienced consultant who specializes in global compliances. Lastly, it is equally crucial to study the language, culture, and norms of the country where the firm plans to conduct international trade activities, or to sell its product and service offerings. A nation's behavioral norms influence how companies should operate in the host country. When operating internationally, a company may take into account adjusting the usual methods used in carrying out business activities, because foreign conditions often dictate a more suitable method, and some modes of international business operations differ from those used domestically. Because the environment of different countries vary from each other, it is vital for business owners or managers to grasp the variance between international and domestic business. A firm operating domestically typically conducts its economic transactions within the geographical boundaries of a country, and the nature of its traders and customers is homogeneous or of the same kind. In terms of business research, it is carried out easily and economically. Moreover, capital investment is less with few restrictions in domestic business. On the other hand, a company operating internationally conducts its economic transactions across various countries, and the nature of its traders and customers is heterogeneous or of diverse character. In terms of business research, it is administered with much challenge and quite expensive. Over and above, the capital investment in international business is huge and with a lot of restrictions compared to domestic business. These are just some of the differences between the two. But on top of that, it is essential that international managers have a working knowledge of the basic physical and social sciences that impact business operations, which we will also discuss in the next lesson. This concludes the end of presentation 1. Please study and take note of the important concepts discussed in this lesson. Up next is presentation 2, the role of culture. Thank you for listening.